meeting of the Transportation Committee. Today is Monday, January 24th. It's roughly 2 p.m. Our first item of business is to review and approve the minutes of the January 10th, 2022 meeting. There are no additions or corrections. We'll entertain a motion to approve those as written.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at this time I'll move approval of January 10th, 2022 minutes.
All right, second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. First application we have on the agenda is an application from WHC BHM LLC. The owner, Mr. Bill George, is joining us remotely. It's my understanding that this is going to be the Z-Trip service that we recently adjusted our taxi ordinance for. So, Mr. George, are you able to hear us?
I can, yes, thank you.
All right. A little rough on the audio on my end, but see if we can get through it.
Is this any better?
Somewhat.
Try to adjust my microphone. Hopefully get
Okay.
better here.
Yeah, it's starting to sound okay.
Okay. Appreciate it. Do you want me to go into a little background on a company?
Yeah, so we did get a little information when we amended the ordinance, but why don't you just refresh our memory about Z-Trip and what you guys are going to be doing?
Sure, we appreciate the opportunity to present today. With me on the phone is Dwight Kynes, who's our Regional Vice President. I've been in the cab business in Kansas City since 1985 and had Yellow Cab for many years. Back in 1997, sold it to a company called Coach USA, stayed on to run it for them, and then bought it back in 2002 and sold it again in 2007 to a company called Transdev. And after I sold it to them in 2000, I became president of their cab operations around the country. And during that period, we started to see with our Yellow Cab businesses the impact that the new TNC businesses would have on it. And we studied the market and determined that the best way to position ourselves to compete would be create the hybrid solution between the traditional safety, security of a taxi cab, the set fares, along with all the features that you see in a TNC. And with that, in 2015, we created Z-Trip. And the goal was to do just that, to get away from the Yellow Cab look of the old highway patrol cars and where drivers wouldn't accept credit cards, there wasn't an app available. You knew you always had a safe driver because of the background checks and everything that was there, but you didn't have the convenience that the TNCs were offering. We did our first test in the Boulder, Colorado market and had great success, and then moved it to our Pittsburgh market. And during that time period, we started converting all of our operations. At the time, Transdev, which was owned by a company out of Paris, France, decided they did not want to be in the cab business any longer. So I formed WHC Worldwide with the intention of making acquisitions around the country and converting them to Z-Trip. Apologize. We made our first acquisition in April of 2018. And since that time, we've completed 24 different acquisitions, including my old company in Kansas City and all of Transdev's cab companies. Pardon me 1 second. So right now, we are the largest taxi cab company in North America. We operate approximately 4,000 vehicles in 26 cities around the United States. And to let you know how we operate, we'll tell you what's going to happen in Birmingham. We were fortunate enough to have you approve our application. We will immediately come in and replace the fleet. So we have agreements with Hertz Rent-A-Car and Enterprise Rent-A-Car that we buy 1-year-old vehicles from their rental fleet, and we keep them in service for approximately 24 to 30 changes that helped with the ordinance is that we don't have to paint the cars a certain color. And the significance of that is by getting the car in and it's factory paint and putting decals on it, we're not damaging the resale value of the car because decals will come back off. You're not painting it. One of my pet peeves was you would open the door to a yellow cab and see the red car on the inside. So by doing this, all of our technology as well is mounted in there. We don't drill any holes. We don't use top lights. We use LED lights in the machine. The advantage of all that is we can turn the fleet over much quicker, which provides cars that are more fuel efficient, that the drivers want to drive and the passengers want to ride in. We feature everything that you would see from a TNC in terms of the convenience of booking with an app, seamless payment, you can pay through the app, but our app goes much further. You can go ahead and choose your favorite driver, so if you have a driver that you like, go ahead and see how far away that driver is and determine, I'll wait an extra 10 minutes to get my favorite driver, I'll take the closest driver. You can book us for now or later, so if you need to be at the airport at 8 a.m. tomorrow, you're going to leave your house 6:30 in the morning. With the TNCs, you never know when you should book exactly or what the cost is going to be if you surge pricing. With us, you simply put in and have a 6:30 a.m. pickup and you know the price in advance. We also have minimum of 10% of our vehicles will be ADA wheelchair equipped. And these vehicles operate at the same price as a regular taxi cab and they're available on the app. So it's the first time that customers that use paratransit services can get true on-demand paratransit service and not have to make appointments a day or two in advance. We are operating out of the same facility the Yellow Cab is. We're in a lease with them, their management team and mechanics, and all the drivers that currently contract with them are the employees will be joining our team. The drivers we hope will contract with us. We hope to expand the fleet and get back into the service where we're on a trajectory for growth, which is what we've seen in every city that we've gone into. We always figure we can do 80% of what we do cookie cutter from each city. We want to keep the local staff on because we know each city has that significance, that local knowledge that comes into play. The 20% that helps us really get an operation that has the support of a national player, but also can be very sensitive to the needs of the local community. And if you can check our resume around the country, you'll find that's exactly what we do. So we're excited to join the market. I'm a big fan of Birmingham. We plan on having our team in there with your approval on February 7th to make this transition and build this fleet back up and create some additional jobs in the city and provide a true, really good transportation resource for your residents and visitors.
Okay, thank you. Who is going to be your local representative? You guys are a national company, so who's going to be your point person here in Birmingham?
The current general manager of the Yellow Cab will stay there, Austin. He will stay in place, and the accounting team will stay. All the mechanics will stay. We will be adding a safety person, so we'll be advertising for that. We'll be adding a salesperson. And then all the drivers eligible to contract. So we keep the local team in place, and we'll be adding some positions to support them. And then Dwight Kynes is based in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm based in Kansas City. Most of our corporate headquarters are in Kansas City, but that's for IT support, for vehicle acquisition, for insurance support, claim support, that type of thing. Everything else is in management.
Okay. Detective Pitts, have they checked out on all the requirements?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. WHC BAM LLC, doing business as Z-Trip, has met all requirements to move forward with the application.
Okay. Councilor Woods, Councilor Tate, do you guys have any questions? Yeah, we're ready for a motion. Yeah, Z-Trip. So what we did before was amend the ordinance so that they could, apply their model here. Now they're actually applying for the permit.
This is the one that the people are not fair.
Right, it's a basically modernized taxi cab service. Yep.
I move approval.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you, Mr. George, for joining us, and we're looking forward to having the service here.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to being in Birmingham February 7th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next item of business is an update from our Department of Transportation on the Park Mobile app.
Good afternoon. Christina Argo with the Department of Transportation. So everybody have a copy of the presentation? All right, well, we'll just dive right in then. As a brief overview, we launched the Park Mobile payment system in July 2020. So all parking meters have the Park Mobile sticker, and that sticker and the signs tell users, oh, is this better? Okay, yep. Stickers and signs tell users what zone they have parked in, and if you guys have used it, you know how seamless it is. You just enter in the zone and zone number in the app and make your payment. One thing that has been updated in the last probably 6 months, Park Mobile has expanded the ways that you can pay. So not only can you use the app, but you can scan the QR code, you can text, or you can also make a phone call to pay for your parking. Some of these signs, we're still kind of in the process of updating the signs, so a lot of the signs around town don't have all of the information, but it is in the app. So if we go to the next page on the highlights, so overall our on-street parking revenue has remained steady. The thing that has been really encouraging though is looking at the conversion rate of users utilizing Park Mobile. So we continue to see about the same amount of revenue, but between cash payments and Park Mobile payments are higher. So people are using the system and instead of carrying around coins. Park Mobile has also expanded to allow for payment not only through debit and credit cards, but PayPal and Apple Wallet. So we'll just walk through some of the high-level numbers. So the first chart you see here are the transaction type breakdown. And what is important to note from this is that 95%, almost 96% of the fees we're collecting from parking are just the initial parking fee. We don't have a lot of people who are continue to extend their time, so they're not abusing the system. So that's a good figure to note. And do you guys want to ask questions along the way, or feel free, or we can, however y'all want to do it. Jump in. All right. So the next chart is showing the average amount for each transaction. So you'll see that we kind of hover between the $1 to $3 range as far as amount per each parking session. That's not very surprising considering our rates at the moment. Next chart, parking, the average park time. So starts at 15 minutes and below and goes to 180 minutes, which is 3 hours or above. And you can see that 2 hours to 3 hours is kind of the winner here as far as the amount of time people are parking using the system. And you see a little bit of that extension time as people are adding. It kind of makes sense. If you plug the meter or pay for parking for 30 minutes, then it makes sense that sometimes you may have to add a extension period. All right, the next chart shows our peak transactions by hour. So we get started here about 7 or 8. It kind of peaks during lunch hour and then continues to decrease towards the end of the day. And this isn't really that surprising either, because we do see a lot of action and activity in the midday hours of people getting out and running errands and moving cars. And then the last chart we have are numbers of transactions and revenue. So we actually have a full year we can look at now that we've been using the service for a year and a half. And the green background color indicates the number of transactions, and then those blue bars is the amount of revenue. So, you know, it's kind of all hovered kind of steady. It's not surprising that maybe sometimes in the winter months we don't have as many people out and about, but I think it's a good sign that we've definitely rebounded from the numbers we were seeing pre-COVID or pre-beginning of COVID, because COVID is still here. So, and then, so do y'all want to talk about numbers before we jump to the last page?
Yeah, so this is all of 2021, so the numbers at the bottom of the chart just correspond to the months January through December.
That's right.
Do you have a total for 2021, total revenue?
So this is Park Mobile. No, I'm still waiting on numbers from municipal court. I've
Okay.
asked, and so you're right. You are seeing a snapshot. You're not seeing the complete picture as far as revenue is concerned, because I've got to get those figures, but I'm following up. So I can certainly provide that once we get those numbers from municipal court.
So we started using Park Mobile prior to March of 2020, is that correct?
July 2020.
Was it July? Okay, so we started using Park Mobile in the midst of the coronavirus, and
Right.
we were probably at or near or somewhere around lockdown in that time period. So a lot of folks had transitioned to remote working. Downtown was sort of a ghost town, which is where a lot of our metered parking is. It kind of seems like, you know, we've resumed somewhat more normal activity, but I wouldn't say that we've completely got back to pre-pandemic levels of activity. So, I mean, is all of that kind of making sense and in
Yes.
agreement with what you've observed?
Absolutely. So we saw a dip in parking revenue from maybe around the July standpoint through the end of the year. But then in 2021, early 2021, it's kind of like everything's just started tapering back up and it remained steady. So yeah, your assessment is correct.
Okay. So percentage-wise, you mentioned that the adoption of utilization of Park Mobile is increasing. More and more people are using the electronic payments versus the cash payments. What does that look like in proportion numbers? Is it, 75% are using electronic payments versus cash payments, or do you know?
So the last update I got was through Q3 of 2021. 2021. So I'm waiting for that last quarter of 2021 to be able to have the whole picture of cash versus Park Mobile. But we were trending towards like a close to 70-30 split. So more towards 70% people paying digitally, 30-something% of people using coins still.
Mm-hmm.
And it has trended up the whole, since launch of app to now, it has continued to trend upwards as far as
Okay.
conversion of people using the app. I think is good.
Yeah. Is Park Mobile doing any sort of customer surveys, feedback? I'm just, I've heard anecdotally from folks who really like it, you know, they're, but, you know, otherwise I haven't heard much. I think there have been some issues from time to time with folks saying, you know, that they've paid through the app, but for whatever reason their car gets ticketed, and we've had to work through a few of those situations. But otherwise, I'm just curious about, you know, what folks feel, you know, is through Park Mobile's own metrics, you know, and sort of consumer feedback.
Yeah, I do think it's time for us to do another survey of our users local to this market. And as luck would have it, I have a call tomorrow with our account rep. We're going to just talk through some things, and I'll ask him if we can do a survey to just to our local market. But as far as issues and concerns, yeah, I do get the requests from folks sometimes who have paid, they got a ticket, or they thought they paid, and so the vast majority of those are, I would say, operator error. So they've entered in the wrong code, they've entered in the wrong license plate number. So it's a lot of issues like that that we work through. And typically the Birmingham Police Department has been very gracious to once we investigate and figure out what's going on, to waive a ticket here and there. And we you know, I would say over the year and a half that we've operated Park Mobile, these kind of concerns have stayed fairly consistent. So we're not seeing a spike in issues. It's one of those things that you will have to encounter as you're moving to a digital platform. There's sometimes the app will go down, you know, their system will go down, but as far as the vast majority of the time, it's operational and things work.
Yeah. One thing, so back when we kind of started down this pathway, you know, we did an analysis, or the Department of Transportation rather did an analysis of the whole on-street parking system and all of its components, and trying to restructure things so that they worked more efficiently. And part of that was looking at the parking enforcement piece. I know that the city has acquired new vehicles, the EV vehicles, for parking enforcement to utilize. But part of the long-term plan for parking enforcement was also to utilize license plate reader cameras in those vehicles, just to, you know, make it really easy for parking enforcement to be able to know which vehicles on the street had, you know, were current on the meter. Have we employed that technology?
I don't know about the parking cameras. Do you know about that? But I can speak to some of the other systemic issues related to our parking
Sure.
system. Do you want to speak to the cameras? Okay. I know we have new vehicles, and parking enforcement is able to maneuver and get places a little bit quicker. But, you know, enforcement is, we have a lot of systemic issues related to our parking system, and enforcement is one of those. So, and that is a priority this year for us to tackle the enforcement piece and how we get better collection on the back end, because we're missing a key piece of revenue. So that is the very next step. Now that we have this process in place, or this system in place, that is the very next step for us to explore our options when it comes to getting folks to comply. So whether that, you know, looks like license plate readers, you know, what are some other options? Towing, you know, that kind of thing. So I actually already have a case open with the Office of City Attorney, so we're starting to look at that policy and how we can start down a tighter path with enforcement.
Yeah, so as Christina was saying, so there's a number of things that we need to fix internally. One of the biggest ones right off the bat was allowing people to pay electronically. Behind that, probably the next biggest issue with the enforcement is getting people to pay their tickets when they receive a ticket. We've requested the latest data, but jumping back a year, the payment percentages, so the percent of people that actually receive a ticket and then go and pay it, was really low. In fact, it was like around 25% or so. It was that low. And so before we invest too much in writing additional tickets, our first priority is to work with the Office of the City Attorney and other agencies to figure out what accountability can we build into the system for the people that actually receive tickets, and in particular people that maybe receive a lot of tickets. So certainly if somebody receives one or two and they don't pay it, well, that's not that big of a deal. But there are people that receive a lot of tickets and don't pay them. And so what accountability can we build into the system? So of the things that we're trying to fix, that's one that we're focusing on in 2022, is how do we achieve back-end accountability when people receive a lot of tickets.
So tell me more about the towing. That's not something that the city has done historically for parking violations. Just kind of expand on that if you would.
Yeah, so what we're currently doing is researching what legal authority do we already have, because it's not clear that we would legally be able to tow for non-payment. We can tow for safety violations, and we do from time to time. So blocking a hydrant, in some cases blocking emergency access. So we can tow for that, but it's not clear that we can tow if someone hasn't paid their tickets. But there may be some other options for accountability that we can assess locally. And then we're also having a discussion about what can we do in partnership with the state legislature if something needs to be changed at the state level, because I have to imagine that the other municipalities in the state also have similar challenges. So,
Right.
So Council, you remember, I'm sorry, Councilor O'Quinn, you know we had that bill that was sponsored by Representative Treadaway that would allow us a mechanism for people who did not pay their parking tickets would not be able to renew their license. I think that may be still in committee, and I think we just probably need to circle back with them to see if we get some more legs on that, because that's, to James' point, that's the enforcement part of it is what's giving us the most heartburn with people paying.
Right. Yeah, and I know it's something that we've included on our legislative agenda, and again, in the most recent legislative agenda that we passed. So perhaps sooner or later the state legislature can actually do something useful and get that passed. Questions?
So what I'm hearing y'all say, I mean, I understand accountability. You know, people getting parking tickets and not paying for parking tickets. And just heard the counselor say that suspending people's licenses on the state legislative agenda. So I'm curious to know, you know, if you spend somebody's driver's license and they got a job, so you're gonna have another problem. You're gonna be driving while license suspended. So how do we balance that? How do we fix that?
that is a great point. And so what I think we'll have to do is I think that our staff will have to work with this body to figure out where that right policy balance is. So to be clear, you know, if somebody gets a ticket a couple of times or even 3 times, well, you know, that's probably not that big of a deal. But there are serial offenders, and I think there should be some accountability. And so I think we'll have to work together to figure out what is the right level of accountability, and what role do our municipal courts play in that, you know, our appointed judge. And so I think we're going to have to work together to have that discussion to figure out where that balance is. I don't think it's as simple as suspending somebody's driver's license if, you know, they've gotten a couple of parking tickets. I definitely agree with you that that would not be the right direction.
And so the bill that Senator Coleman has sponsored several years in a row would actually connect those parking tickets to vehicle registration. So it wouldn't be, I don't know, maybe there's another variation floating around the legislature, but so in many other states, they allow that if you have a parking fine outstanding, then when you go to renew your vehicle registration, you would pay with it there. But to James' point, it's been 4 years since I've seen any data from our municipal court, but we had a list of, you know, thousands of people who hadn't paid parking fines, and at the top of that list, there were individuals in the same vehicle that had accumulated thousands of dollars of parking tickets. And so a parking ticket, you know, is $25. That's the base fine. So to accumulate, you know, our $7,000 stands out in my mind as one of the top offenders. So to accumulate enough tickets to be $7,000 in value, you know, they're just wantonly parking wherever they want and ignoring the rules. So but getting back to sort of like keeping everything in context, the reason that we have paid on-street parking in the first place is not to create a source of revenue for the city. The reason for paid on-street parking is to create turnover. So in places around the city currently that don't have metered parking, you can have a vehicle there weeks, months, inevitably, but that's not something that you want to have happening in front of businesses. So those businesses rely on having parking turnover for their customers to be able to get in and out. So that's why we put a time limit on it and charge a small fee, is to create that turnover in those parking spaces. So the revenue is sort of an aside, and it's really about creating that turnover so that we can keep people moving in and out of those businesses.
Well, and one more thing to note on the total revenue of the overall system. So I think people that are using the system on a day-to-day basis assume that the city is making money from the overall parking enforcement system and the parking meters. But we'll come back with a Part B presentation, and we'll pretty clearly show that the city actually loses money overall when we add up the cost of all of the employees and then maintaining the meters. So we pretty steadily lose money year over year on managing that system. And so until we build in that accountability and increase that payment rate for the tickets, and so that people at least take the tickets more seriously, because right now if we're at about 25%, that's pretty low. And so until that rate goes up and people are more incentivized not to get a ticket in the first place, we're going to be hamstrung on the back end in terms of being able to enforce well and manage the system well. And so our system will still appear to be broken in a lot of senses until we can correct that accountability piece.
And I was just going to piggyback on the comment you made about on-street parking. Those spaces are our most valuable spaces. So we want them to turn over, and we want to be able to support our local businesses with people being able to get in and out and do business. So just let's look at the last page just to kind of sum things up of where we're heading. Long term, it's likely that our physical parking meters will go away. And as an update, a lot of the meters we utilize, we have kind of two different types of meters on the street now. and the older ones are to the point where we cannot get replacement parts. So that technology is fading out and going away. So, on-street parking will transition to payments by Park Mobile, and we are currently testing some meterless blocks in some locations. And we do have a big opportunity to partner with UAB and looking at some of the parking opportunities they have on their campus. They are a great testing spot for new technology. They've got a young, diverse user base that embraces technology. So we definitely have already started conversations with UAB and how we can help and partner with them. So,
I heard from Director Davis recently that UAB has over 25,000 parking spaces that they have to manage. So
25,000.
yeah.
And our on-street would be a smaller percentage of that, but
Right.
it would definitely help with them. So in looking at the overall benefits, we will no longer have the expense of maintaining these physical parking meters. Another thing that I love to think about is, as I'm thinking about the walkability of our city, if you think about all of those meters every 10 feet, every 20 feet, once we go to, just signage with Park Mobile, we have less clutter on our sidewalks, so they kind of open up for people to be able to walk and enjoy. And it's also really convenient for users. We're seeing people really embrace the technology. So that's what I've got. Do we have more questions? We'll certainly follow up with some of the more broader reaching numbers related to the whole parking system.
Yeah, so when you say long-term, we're talking years, right? Before we could transition away from having the physical meters?
I have in my head what I think it's going to take. We'll see what James thinks.
Well, we have a couple of blocks around that for one reason or another only have signage, like maybe there was some construction on that block and the meters got removed. And so we're already testing in a few locations what that looks like. In discussions with UAB, they would be interested, in the next year at looking on the academic side of their campus, creating some blocks that just have the signage. As Christina mentioned, on the academic side, there's kind of a younger population there that is probably more flexible with that. And so I suspect that over the coming years, we will phase out certain blocks in certain areas, and then depending on how that goes, and also depending how the industry evolves, because as Christina mentioned, the manufacturers of the meters are stopping making a lot of those parts, and so they're getting harder and harder to maintain. So to your point, I would expect over a few years we would look to phase that out and do that in a targeted and gradual way, kind of based on what we see.
Yeah, some of those meters are actually like Swiss clocks. They have all the little gears and everything inside of there. So I think the first parking meters, were invented probably in the early 1900s, and some of our technology probably looks very similar.
Are very mechanical.
Yeah.
The other cool thing to note is we found this out from UAB last week, is that they've already gone to digital payments only with their parking system. So anytime you park in a UAB lot or a deck, they're not taking cash anymore. So.
Okay, and you said they do offer like a call-in option though, right? So
They do.
yeah.
Yep. There's a I don't know if it's 1-800 or 1-866 number on every side.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, have we looked at all or got a number around what revenue should be, if all spaces were active 8 to 5, what that looks like? Or
Do you have a ballpark on that?
We'll have to cover that in a Part B presentation. Off of the top of my head, so from the numbers that we looked at about a year ago and going back a little bit further, it was over $1 million a year in total. And so when we add up all the staff salaries and things, we're pretty far. We quickly surpass that in our expenses each year, but it was well over $1 million in total. But we'll come back with a more precise number.
Yeah, if we could just look at revenue, like what, if it was maximized as far as, assuming it was 100% filled, 8 to 5, which probably wouldn't be. Yeah, I mean, because like I know it's hard to have any kind of comparative number during COVID, because we're probably experiencing some kind of dip, but we can't. So maybe the digital format is actually improving over what would have been status quo, but we can't tell. But if we could see what the really max is, we have a little bit something better to compare to when we're looking at what we're actually bringing in. And this is separate from expenses. All right,
Understood.
One other question. So we have a variety of meters around town with different time levels. We have some, 30-minute meters, a whole lot of 2-hour meters, and then, some that are like 8 or 10-hour meters. I think when we had initially, started this whole process a few years ago, there was an idea that we would transition, to more uniformity across the system and not have those 8, 10-hour meters because, there's no turnover there. Somebody's arriving in the morning, they're paying the meter, and that car is there on the street for close to that duration. That's still the thought that we would transition away from those longer duration meters.
Yeah, it definitely is, and in particular, moving away from like the 8-hour meters. There's some of those around UAB's campus, and they would like to move away from those prolonged periods of time as well. It's just not a good use for the on-street space, because on-street parking is, in many ways, the most convenient form of parking. It's just right next to the roadway. And so we would prefer to make those shorter duration, higher turnover, and really higher cost than off-street parking. So if somebody's going to leave, they're going to store their car for a full day, it would be best if they stored it out of the street. And so, so to your point, yes, we're going to continue to migrate away from the long durations.
Okay, thank you. All right. Appreciate you guys, and we'll look for a part 2.
Yes, part 2.
Yep. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Any old or new business? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move adjournment.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.